Welcome to White Space. You have been here for as long as you can remember. The world outside has ceased to exist as your imagination takes over. Pink fluffy clouds fill your mind as your muscles lose more and more strength. You see two doors. One seems real, the other a dream. Your body and limbs have long become one with your bed, and you don't have the energy to turn the doorknob anymore. You long for this pain to cease, even if only for a little while. There behind the dream door, your friends, they're sitting around playing. Hurry, dreamer, adventure awaits. You turn your back on reality and enter that world of pure imagination. Waiting for something to happen? Welcome, dreamer. This is Omori.
This game contains themes of suicide, depression, and grief, as well as some flashing imagery. If that is not something you feel comfortable with, it may not be safe to watch this video. I am a firm believer that, above all, games should be made to entertain the player and to be fun. However, it is a rare thing that a single game can touch your very soul, that can break you. Omori is that type of game, however. It's mainly tagged as a psychological horror, but I would not label it as such. Surely it has many horrifying elements, but to categorize such a game under a single genre I feel would be doing a disservice. To me, truly great media cannot be so easily defined. Movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey, Hereditary, End of Evangelion, games like NieR Automata and Doki Doki Literature Club. All of these could be described as horror, but only because they tackle horrifying realities of the human mind. It can only properly be communicated to the audience by appealing to those deep portions of the brain which normally bury such disturbing thoughts away. Omori is such a game. It was not crafted to scare you, but rather to tell you a story. Every single element in the game is there to serve that distinct purpose. It just so happens that the story itself is disturbing in nature. Before I continue, let me lay out how this video will be structured. I want as many people to play Omori as humanly possible, so the first part of this video will be completely spoiler-free in terms of the story and serve as a basic rundown of Omori as a game, so that people who haven't played it may get a better understanding of it and then maybe decide to play it. I will place a spoiler warning and timestamps in the description. That section of the video will be my thoughts on the game and the overall story. Now, without further ado, let's get into this. Omori is a turn-based RPG adventure game where you lead a party of you and 3 of your friends, Aubrey, Kel, and Hero, as you explore Headspace, a world filled with numerous memorable characters, colorful scenery, and settings, while sharing fun and laughs. The game was created by 𝐁𝐫𝐞𝐚𝐤 and had a fairly infamous development cycle, having had a Kickstarter all the way back in 2014 after a wildly bizarre and masterfully edited trailer boosted its budget more than 10 times the goal amount. However, there would be many issues with production, including having the engine of the game, which was made in RPG Maker, being updated and rendering many of the assets useless. Many people thought the game would never come out, but a surprise trailer dropped at the end of 2020 and announced a date: 12/25, Christmas. I personally had not heard of the game until after that trailer had dropped. After seeing it, I knew instantly I needed to play it as soon as possible. Finally, the game has been released and has received instant critical acclaim. But what is it like actually playing Omori? As I said, it is a turn-based RPG adventure game made in RPG Maker, which has developed a sort of bad reputation in recent years. Omori, however, far exceeds that expectation, especially when it comes to the combat. You control a party of 4 and each of them has unique skills they can utilize. There is, of course, the basic attack that everyone has, which can be higher or lower depending on the character and the toy that is equipped. Each character has a specific skill set which makes them more useful than others in different situations. Aubrey has low juice, which is essentially skill points, but has high HP and hits very hard. Most of her skills will pack a punch. 𝐁𝐫, on the other hand, has pretty low attack damage, but he makes up for it by having a lot of juice and skills that can give him buffs, help his teammates, or do damage. Hero is essentially the team's main healer, which makes up most of his skills, as well as having buffs and debuffs to help with your strategy. I consider Omori to be this team's second most lethal offensive weapon after Aubrey, and has skills that both do damage and offer very useful debuffs to enemies. None of this is very unique to this game, and is standard for RPGs as a whole. However, easily the most interesting part of Omori's combat is the emotion system, of which a very simple diagram of is on the screen right now. It essentially works as a rock, paper, scissors system, with sad beating happy, happy beating anger, and anger beating sad. While that is nice in itself, each emotion carries with it multiple pros and cons that will force you to strategize in tough battles if you want the best possible outcome. Sad will raise your defense but also lower your attack and make you lose juice as you get hit. Anger will raise your attack but lower your defense. Happy doesn't affect attack or defense, but will instead raise your crit level at the expense of your accuracy. Emotions can be inflicted onto enemies and onto party members. Sometimes enemies will start a battle with a certain emotion, and sometimes one of their attacks will inflict one. Each one of your party members specializes in one emotion. Aubrey's is happy, 𝐁𝐫's is anger, Omori's is sad, and Hero can remove any emotion from a party member with one of his skills. Different battles require different emotions to be utilized, which gives a surprising amount of depth to the game's combat. I had many moments where I had to stop and pause to decide which strategy I would go for, especially for boss fights. There was a time where I unlocked a cage and unleashed at least a dozen angry high-level bears, and I had to use all of Aubrey's juice, making her and Omori happy since they did the most damage. I eventually got the process down to a science after about a half hour of fighting those damn bears. The emotion system is not only a unique combat feature, but also serves to help flesh out the characters without the need for dialogue. We as the player come to understand them more through which emotion they can inflict. Aubrey is usually upbeat and giddy, so it's only natural she would make others around her happy. 𝐁𝐫 is fairly immature and prone to start fights, and while certainly lovable, can annoy those around him, making them angry. Omori is detached and has a generally downer vibe to him, so he has the chance of making his friends and enemies sad. Hero is the oldest and most mature of the group, and is always there to lend a hand, helping his friends figure out and work through their emotions. Thus, he can remove any of them within the gameplay. This process feels so natural to the player, and the characterization in Omori is a step above most other games. By the end of it, I felt like Aubrey, 𝐁𝐫, and Hero were really my friends as we went on this grand adventure. Believe it or not, there is yet another layer to the combat. At the bottom of the screen, there is a bar, which gradually fills up to 10 every time the party takes damage. When that number reaches 3, one of your characters can do a follow-up by interacting with one of the other party members. Sometimes this is a second attack, or it enables an emotion and increases stats. With Hero, it usually results in healing. Omori, however, is not able to participate in this. His follow-ups include a second attack and tripping the enemy. If another character tries to interact with him, they will be outright ignored. Once again, this is where the genius in Omori's combat system really shines. It shows the relationships these characters have more than words ever could, and shows Omori's own detached mental state as a silent protagonist, all while being fun and engaging. When the meter reaches 10, the party can do what is essentially an all-out attack from Persona, dealing massive damage to your enemies and featuring an awesome little animated cutscene that honestly warms my heart every time I see it. You will be forced to make decisions regarding this meter. Do you want to use up those points now or save them for an all-out attack later? The combat in Omori is honestly much deeper than I initially thought it would be going in, offering an experience that was immersive, fun, and always kept me on my toes. Omori is downright gorgeous to look at. The sprite work is top notch, and you can tell a lot of time was put into the color palette of each of the worlds. They're wholly unique and no two look the same. But what I really want to focus on are the animations. Holy shit. Omori features a hand-drawn animation style for all of the cutscenes, and I just can't stop looking at it. You can tell this is an indie game in the best way possible. Games with limited budgets need to get very creative when it comes to a lot of different aspects. 𝐁𝐫𝐞𝐚𝐤 and the team couldn't just make a ton of 3D modeled cutscenes, and the game is better for it, as it fits so well into the entire vision. I've honestly never seen a game that looks like Omori does. Not only are the cutscenes hand-drawn, but the battle sequences use the same style, and each enemy has its own unique animation. The time, effort, and sheer dedication to make an amazing game is clearly evident. I don't think I need to talk about the art very much, as you can clearly see it for yourselves, and my words alone cannot do justice for it. Needless to say, it is easily the most unique and quite possibly the best art style I have ever experienced in a video game. Similar to the art, the music is clearly something 𝐁𝐫𝐞𝐚 and team put a ton of time and effort into. There is somewhere around 170 different music tracks. I mean, the variety is simply mind-blowing, especially for an indie game. Different areas of the world will feature different tracks, and even going into someone's house will often cause a unique song to play. This applies to the combat music as well. Different enemies have different tracks. The majority of the soundtrack is very bubbly and childlike, fitting in perfectly with the look and feel of the game. There were several times later in the game that these songs would come back, and it always managed to bring a huge smile to my face. There were also times when these tracks would be used in disturbing situations, perverting and twisting the happy association I had with these songs to great effect. Let us not forget, Omori is certainly a horrific game. However, instead of talking with words and how much I enjoyed the game's OST, it'll be more productive to have you listen to some of my favorite songs from the game. One last thing I will say about the soundtrack is that, like the combat, it offers a varying array of different emotions. Songs will make you feel happy, some will make you feel sad, and some will really piss you off. But above all, when it wants to, Omori's OST will make you feel like you have finally come back home after a long, long journey. This is about how far I can go without talking about the story and thus avoiding even minor spoilers. The next part of this video will cover the basics of the story and will not touch on any of the endings nor any of the major plot twists. So the question remains, should you play Omori? Yes, absolutely. This is a game you will not want to miss. Everything I've talked about are brilliant aspects of the game, but all of them pale in comparison to the story and themes of Omori. This is an experience that will make you feel, make you cry, and if you're anything like me, will absolutely break you. If anything I've talked about up to this point has sounded interesting, I implore you to give this game a shot, or at least watch all 3 of its masterfully edited trailers to see if they intrigue you. And if you're still not convinced and don't mind some relatively early game spoilers, then sit back and relax as I touch on the story just enough to try and convince you. Omori is a game filled to the brim with joy. I can't even count the amount of times I laughed out loud during my playthrough. I don't want to compare it too much to Undertale, but when it comes to the humor, they are certainly similar. Like, both games are absolutely fucking hilarious. But while Undertale's humor served as a backdrop to better shine a light on the melancholy of that world, and the stifled hopes and dreams of the monsters buried underground, Omori uses its colorful world to cover up a sickening reality. It is nothing more than an escape from a horrifying truth that the protagonist cannot face. Something lies beneath. Once you make it past what is essentially the game's tutorial and arrive at Basil's house, you put his photo album back together, reminiscing on the good times you've had with all of your friends. However, one photo still isn't in the book. Basil picks it up without much thinking, but when he looks at it, something is wrong. No, better yet, something is there. And then, white space. Except this time, there is no door. No escape from this once familiar room that has now taken on a more disturbing vibe. You walk around, waiting for something to happen, but nothing does. Nothing until you look into the party menu with a single new option coded in red: stab. And so, you do, perhaps without considering the full implications of this action. Your name, if you so choose it to be, is Sunny. It is night as the crickets buzz around you. Alone in your room, you hear a message. Your mother is gone, but she'll be coming back to pick you up in 3 days. 3 short days until you move away. You get hungry and decide to check the fridge. But the stairs, they haunt you. Your fears quickly take over as you're met with something. It's okay, Sonny, you need to calm down. Everything is going to be okay. And so you do, and the fear subsides, for now. You continue downstairs, greeted by a cold leftover steak, absent of the love of a home-cooked meal. You throw it in the microwave and grab the knife to cut it. But it makes you sick. Everything makes you sick. Suddenly there is a knock on the door. It says it is your sister Mari coming back home late. Will you open the door? You make your way back to your bed and return to the dream. Once there, you'll be going on more wacky adventures with your friends, this time in the other world. However, while that is where I started to truly fall in love with Omori, it isn't necessarily relevant to this story synopsis, so I will be skipping it for now. Towards the end of this section of the game, you will fight a boss, Space Boyfriend. Shortly after this, you wake back up in white space, except like last time, the door is not there. Once again, you are cut off from your colorful headspace and instead left with nothing to do. You were asked over and over again if you are waiting for something to happen. After some wandering around, the cold reality creeps in. You open up your menu and are once again met with blood red letters: stab. Of course, you as the player don't want to do this, but Omori the character leaves you with no other option. The illusion for these circumstances seems to be that he has extremely suicidal thoughts and does not know how to cope with everything happening around him. Or even worse, he actually self-harms. And as much as you wander around white space, the only way out is to stab yourself. And so, you do it again. And, like last time, you finally wake up.
You turn your back on the dream, even if only for a short while. Goodbye, dreamer. We will see you again soon. Sunlight hits your eyes. You do not know how long you have been sleeping for, but you feel an anxiety creeping in, and your heart begins to race. Steadying your breath, you prepare for another day alone. Yet you hear a knock on the door. Who could it be? A terror creeps in. Could it be your dear sister? Well, Sonny, what will you do? Do you have the strength to answer the door?
You as the player get to choose what Sonny will do. Depending on your choice here, either one of two routes will emerge. Of course, I opened the door, so I will mainly be discussing that route. And when I did, I was hit with a surprise that gave me the biggest and dumbest grin on my face. My friend 𝐁𝐤 was there. It is here that you start to piece together what has happened to Sonny. You have not left your house in 3 years. You have lived within whitespace for that whole time, cutting yourself off from reality and your own troubled emotions. But today, you have made the first step towards healing. You have opened the door. Since Sonny will be moving away in 3 days, 𝐁𝐤 wanted to see him one last time before he left. He didn't even expect Sonny to answer the door, but you made that choice to face your fears. And so, you and 𝐁𝐤 set off on a new adventure in Faraway Town, the place you have always lived in, the only real place that you know. But things are not always so simple, which becomes clear once you see Aubrey again for the first time. She is not the girl you remember from your dream. Dressed in ragged clothes and sporting pink hair, she stares at you with rage and hatred, bullying Basil and seemingly stealing his photo album. And of course, there's only one way to get it back. You and 𝐁𝐤 have to fight for it. This is once again where the genius of Omori's combat comes into play. Aubrey, like in Headspace, packs a punch with her baseball bat. Your party stats seem comparatively weak to hers, and the dread of feeling like this is an unwinnable fight begins to set in. And then, Sonny does his first attack, and the game halts. You're left confused and taken aback. What's wrong? You've been fighting like this for hours now. Then Aubrey proclaims that, holy shit, you have a fucking knife. And reality sets in all at once. You are not in the dream world anymore. It seemed normal to attack creatures in that manner, but this is a live person. And let me not understate this. Sonny literally just sliced someone he once called the best friend with a fucking knife. Instantly, the audience recognizes how deranged and warped his mental state is, clearly being detached from any rationality that should exist within reality. Not a single word needs to be uttered from Sonny for you as the player to wonder what else he might be capable of. What trauma has he experienced to make him this way? And then, after exploring the town, having more fun with 𝐁𝐤, and ultimately confronting Aubrey in the church to get back that photo album, that answer becomes crystal clear. Once again, what I am about to say is something I discovered about 6 hours into my playthrough, and completely changes the experience from this point on. I still consider it relatively minor compared to later reveals, but here is your last warning for the specific story beat. Your sister, who has served as the rock and safe haven in the entirety of your playthrough thus far, she has been dead for years, and you have been a shut-in ever since. I'm not going to speak further on the story in this section, as if you're not already interested, then you may not want to play this game. But let me be clear. If you believe this is the extent of Sonny's trauma, you are sorely mistaken. If you want to find out more, then I ask you to go play the game yourself. But before you go, I want to take this opportunity to talk about what I consider to be perhaps the smartest aspect of the game. Once I played as Sonny, I came to understand that Headspace is just that, inside of his head. It is truly nothing more than a dream he does not wish to ever wake up from. When I found out why he wants to always be asleep, that his dear sister Mari was dead, it broke my heart. The entire game up to that point gets recontextualized. All the little details suddenly point to something. It all makes sense. And what is the hardest part is that for its majority, Omori is a super fun, lighthearted game. The adventures I had with Aubrey, 𝐁𝐤, and Hero in Headspace were some of my favorite moments I've ever had gaming, from literally crying with laughter to sympathizing with a lot of the characters within it. I loved my time there, and to realize it was all a dream, that literally none of it is real, made me sad. Not only that, but the genius game structure of Omori makes it so that once you find out that Mari is dead, the happier and more fun the dream is, the more shitty and sad it makes you feel. The juxtaposition made it so that the amount of laughs I experienced during my time there were equally turned into tears when certain truths came to light. While the humor in Undertale made you sympathize with the sad life of the monsters underground, and surely was extremely effective, it was still real. In Omori, not only is it not real, it is all a colorful coping mechanism for a teenager with deep and horrific trauma. And you will be playing in this world possibly for tens of hours knowing that fact, constantly haunting you underneath your fun, reminding you in the smallest of details, and cracks within the dream. Just like it does for Omori the character, it will send fear throughout your entire body. At this point in the game, I was broken. I do not live with constant trauma as Sunny does. I don't believe most of us do. But I can relate to him in a lot of ways, and I know that so many other people can as well. There are times when I just don't want to, or don't have the energy to, get out of bed. There are times when my dreams feel so vibrant and colorful, fun and full of life, that I don't want to wake up. Instead, every time my body forces itself awake, I choose to go back to sleep. I don't want the dream to end just yet. I want to keep living in it, but that isn't possible. Your life needs to be lived in reality. You and I both have responsibilities we need to attend to. Even so, every time my body is literally unable to sleep anymore, I lay in bed for a while, wondering why the world I'm in now isn't as colorful as the dream, why the emotions I felt there feel so much more powerful than they do here. And there are no easy answers to those questions. But you, me, and Sunny alike need to remember that the dream is not real. We cannot find happiness within it. The truth will always find a way to seep through, and we cannot stay asleep forever. One day, somehow, we must wake up. And if we have the courage, we must open that door and let the sunlight in. Omori taught me so much, and I wanted to teach you too. Please, play this game. I'm going to end this section here, so the entirety of Omori will be spoiled ahead, including the endings. I don't want any of you to miss out on this once-in-a-lifetime experience that OmoCat and team have lovingly crafted. There is a truth behind this all, and it is your job to uncover it together with Sunny. The game is on Steam for, I believe, $20. Go play right now and click off this video. Truly, I thank you for watching and hope you too can find your way out of the dream.
Black tangled hair envelops a broken violin. Blood stains the floor. No, you don't understand. Who is on the floor down the stairs? And why aren't they moving? She must be tired, you figure. Being the kind boy you are, you take her to her bed. Surely she just needs a little rest. But why isn't she moving?
I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. Please, wake up, I'm sorry.
You shake her shoulders a bit. Her lifeless body feels heavy under your touch. No reaction. You don't understand what's happening.
You're scared. She's hanging from a tree. Why?
Basil looks at you with horror in his eyes. Something stares at you, reminds you.
You killed her. You killed her. You killed Mari.
You cannot handle the truth. You run into the dream.
Good night, Sunny, and welcome, Omori. Omori is a turn-based RPG adventure game where you lead a party of you and 3 of your friends, Aubrey, Kel, and Hero, as you explore Headspace, a world filled with numerous memorable characters, colorful scenery and settings, fun, and laughs. Omori is also a game where the protagonist accidentally kills his own sister and, with his best friend, covers it up by tying her up in a noose and hanging her from a tree, staging the entire thing as a suicide. Her friends, family, and everyone she knew have to live on for years, believing that she had taken her own life. Mari's parents had to wonder what it was they did wrong. Hero had to wonder how he hadn't noticed the signs ahead of time. Aubrey and 𝐁𝐫 had to come to terms that someone they looked up to would do such a thing, no doubt greatly affecting their own outlooks on life. And only two people, Sunny and Basil, have to bear this truth. Sunny killed Mari, and Basil helped stage a suicide. They did something horrible and evil, and yet, despite everything, they need to learn to love themselves. They need to learn to tackle this trauma head on, and above all, they need to learn how to forgive themselves. That is the journey you embark on throughout the game. As you fight enemy after enemy and choose to open those doors, you can help Sunny come a little bit closer to accepting the truth head on and then forgiving himself. He deserves to love himself, and I believe that is the theme of Omori. No matter what has happened, there can still be a future ahead of you. It's okay for you to be happy. Despite it all, everything can be okay. Of course, this logic doesn't apply to quite everybody, as there is some truly heinous criminals, but for the majority of us, we've all done horrible things. Things that we cannot forgive ourselves for. Things that make us truly hate ourselves. Honestly, we all have our something that follows us around. Every time we laugh or crack a smile, there is a tiny voice in our heads that asks us if we deserve to be this happy. We can't always feel something's presence, but we know in the back of our minds that it is always there. Omori is a game that wants us to be able to forgive ourselves. Since I'm assuming that everyone who is still watching has already played Omori, I won't bother to go over the complete story. I don't imagine reviewing a story you've already experienced would give you many new insights, which I at least see as the purpose of this section of the video. Instead, what I offer you is my own experience, my thoughts, my theories, and the tears and laughs I shared with those characters. And that's exactly where I want to start, the characters. Since any great story tells its narrative primarily through its characters, I believe that speaking on those in Omori is the best way to convey my thoughts on the story as a whole. Before I begin this section, I want to preface it by first adding a disclaimer. Including all the trigger warnings I have already provided in the beginning of the video, this section specifically would touch on child abuse. If that is not something you feel comfortable with, please skip to this timestamp. Furthermore, I would also like to add that I am by no means an expert on these issues, and am only speaking on my own speculations of the characters. I will be speaking on patterns in child abuse cases, but my thoughts should obviously not be placed on real situations. Aubrey is perhaps my favorite character in the game. In Headspace, she's fun, spunky, and has an attitude that was never annoying to me, but instead was incredibly endearing. In Faraway Town, all of those traits that were cute when she was a kid evolved into their natural conclusion. She's not just a bad bitch who isn't taking anyone's shit, she's a bully. Her tendency to swing around a bat has turned into being confrontational and outwardly violent towards others. As a child, she was upbeat and cheery. That's why she specializes in the happy emotion within Headspace. However, none of that past spark is there. Aubrey is pessimistic, even self-deprecating in the way she laughs about horrible situations. It would seem that the apparent suicide of Mari had a tremendous effect on her outlook on life. She has become cynical. Not only that, but she feels abandoned by everyone around her. Aside from being cut off from Sunny, 𝐁𝐫, Hiro, and Basil, which she plainly states within the game, Aubrey is also clearly the product of abusive parenting. Stepping into her house later in the game was honestly sort of terrifying. Literal trash thrown about everywhere as her mother blankly stares at the TV, a droning white noise making its way into your very mind. It can be inferred that the mom is this way because Aubrey's father has left the home, which is outright stated in the church. However, why would the father even leave in the first place? This is pure speculation, but I believe there is reason to think that Aubrey's father may have abused both her and her mother. Firstly, unlike Sunny's parents, there is no clear reason why Aubrey's father left in the first place. Simple divorce seems unlikely, as it is indicated that he is not in her life at all. When you are transversing memory lane as Sunny and come across the memory of being outside with 𝐁𝐫 and Aubrey in the rain, she makes a remark regarding her and Mari wanting to dye their hair pink and purple respectively. While this is a very adorable example of their healthy relationship, and also brought tears to my eyes when I saw Mari has purple highlights in the postcard for the latest Omori merch drop, it also should be obvious that Aubrey did indeed dye her hair pink later in life. During that flashback, she states that it was because her father was strict about those kind of things. An already slightly alarming remark in its own right, which seems to indicate that since she did dye her hair, her father not only does not live with her, but he likely no longer has any parental control over her life. Again, this is all speculation, and some of it is even baseless, but it should be clear why Aubrey is the way she is when we see her in Faraway Town. However, she still has so much love in her heart. When she finally comes around and the group accepts her back in, we see that she is not only surprisingly mature and level-headed, but just wants others to be happy, just like Aubrey in the dream world. Fundamentally, she is the same person, just broken, scared, and alone. And yet, she is the one who tells Sunny that he deserves to be happy, that she hopes that he can finally find peace, even if she herself hasn't. She is kind. Ah, Henry. At least I believe that is his canonical name. And for reasons that will become apparent in this section, I will be calling him that instead of the name used in game, Hero. It is abundantly clear that him and Mari had romantic feelings towards each other. I have read that they were never officially dating, but come on. We all saw the same pictures in that photo album. They definitely loved each other. And it's clear that not only did Henry take it incredibly hard, but he still has not fully recovered from it. While all four of them look at the stump that held the tree that Mari hung herself from, it isn't Aubrey, but Henry who, with tears filling his eyes, says that they should move on and go check out the treehouse. He wants to live within those old memories rather than facing the hard reality of Mari's death. Sounds almost like someone else I know. I saw an Omori mod a while back on YouTube where you play as Henry, and it implies that he had his own white space, of which he has returned to since learning of what Sunny and Basil did. Of course, this isn't canon to the actual game, but it is certainly an interesting perspective. If you go to Mari's grave with just Kel in Faraway Town, he reveals that after Mari's death, Henry would not leave the house for almost an entire year. He lashed out at his brother and his family, and it was only until Kel could finally reach him that he got out of that dark space. Or, should I say, that white space. It would not be a stretch to assume that during this period in his life, Henry had his own, albeit lesser version of, headspace, and lived within it, going on adventures with the love of his life. The love that had taken her own life. Even after going to college, Henry buries himself in his studies. It can be assumed that he doesn't socialize as much, and that he certainly hasn't garnered the reputation of a charismatic and universally beloved young man that he has in Faraway Town. He is not a hero. He is a hurting, broken person who, at heart, is still the young teen who is in love with the brightest, most helpful girl in the entire world. And yet, despite everything, he is still kind. He, like before, is still the rock and glue that holds the entire friend group together. He almost single-handedly fixes the drama tearing the other four apart in just a single day. And that's the point. He can be both Henry, sad and broken, and Hero, charismatic and helpful, at the same time. He is complex, just like Aubrey, and just like every other human being alive. He is kind. When I first saw Kel at the door during the first day, the smile on my face went from ear to ear. While he was probably my least favorite of the cast in Headspace, purely based off his immature nature, there just seemed something different about him in reality, and I was right. Kel is quite literally the spark for the entire story. He is the sole reason that you leave the safety and comfort of your house on the first day. He is the first one that is there for you, and if you pay enough attention, has really always been. During the first real gameplay segment of the game, where you play hide and seek, it is almost always Kel that people find first. But why is this? Well, he left himself out in the open intentionally right next to you, so that he could help you look for everyone else, so that you wouldn't have to do it alone. Such a simple gesture in the beginning of the game has profound implications once you reach the end. Kel does literally the same thing when he knocks on your door, leaving himself vulnerable and open, ready to lend a helping hand to a friend so that they wouldn't have to face the world alone. That is simply just breathtaking storytelling and foresight. Even when it comes to Hero, Kel was the one who did the same thing. He was the one who brought him out of the house. If Sonny had a brother like Kel, who sometimes persists to the point of annoyance, would he have lived in headspace for so long? However, like Hiro, Kel is not just a robot who is always there to help. Mari's death hurt him too. He was just a young kid, afraid to step on toes, and had no idea how to handle the situation, so he took comfort in playing sports and hanging out with his other friends. Just like everyone else, he ran away. But just like Aubrey and Hiro, he is kind and does not want to leave his friends alone anymore. He wants to reach out to Sonny even if it may hurt. Kel doesn't want him to be alone. He is kind. Unlike the other three, Basil is a character we honestly don't see much of, yet know almost the most about. Basil is the definition of a tortured soul. It was his idea to frame Mari's death as a suicide, and he has his own something that follows him around, constantly reminding him of what he has done. Of course, he was just a scared kid like Sonny and wanted to help his friend from getting in trouble, but he inadvertently made the whole situation much, much worse. Basil in the real world is an anxious wreck. There always seems to be a sense of fear or paranoia written on his face, as if at any point something is going to come after him. Of course, we as the player come to learn that something really is following him. Just like how Sonny's something is the image of Mari hanging from the tree as he looked back, I personally believe that Basil's something, which seems to be a tangled mess of long threads, is Mari's hair. As he ties the makeshift noose around Mari's neck, her skin growing cold and white as the blood drains out of her. His dirtied hands briefly get stuck in her tangled black hair, bits of wood caught in them. Perhaps to avoid suspicion, he takes the time to remove every bit of violence stuck in there, one after another. And as he finally pauses from the numbing experience of staging a suicide, of which I'm sure he was just blindly going through the motions during such a traumatic experience, his mind finally slows down enough to process the situation. What the fuck am I doing? He asks himself. His head hurts. His heartbeat quickens. He feels a cold sweat. But it's too late. Yes, it's too late to stop. Sonny would be blamed. They wouldn't understand. They won't understand that it wasn't him, but something that was behind him. Yeah, Sonny didn't kill his sister. It was something else. And as soon as that thought crosses his mind, that something was involved here, he glances down at his hands, tangled up in Mari's black hair, and the sight is burned into his very heart. It is something he can never forget. However, unlike Sonny, there is no indication of anything resembling a split personality or any white space forming. Instead, it seems as if Basil has confronted the issue head on. I'm not sure if this is a good thing though, as while he does understand the implication of his actions and the sins he has committed, which is the first step of healing, he obviously cannot get past that first step. Instead, his anxiety never ceases, and he is unable to relax for even a second. And yet, despite everything, he has never told the truth. His concern is never to save his own skin, but that he still desperately wants to protect Sonny. If that isn't a true friend, then I don't know what is. However, when he's confronted with the person that he's barred all this pain and suffering for, the only one who could understand what he's going through is going to leave him, he completely breaks down. Add into this the implied death of his grandmother, or at least severe hospitalization, and he cannot handle it anymore. The fight with him was absolutely heartbreaking to say the least. These two young, confused, traumatized teenagers hurting each other because they just don't know how to handle the situation. What's even more devastating is when this fight doesn't happen, when Sonny chooses to leave his friend. Basil ends up taking his own life, in what is considered one of the neutral endings. In fact, all of the neutral endings do result in Basil ending his life, even if it's off-screen. And perhaps what is the worst ending in the game, maybe even more so than the deemed bad ending, in which Sonny goes back to sleep instead of confronting Basil. The latter is discovered by his caretaker and hero Kel, Aubrey, and yourself. He is dead, having stabbed himself in the chest, succumbing to his guilt and suffering. It's hard to even imagine how the friends would process that. A second suicide to someone they care for, especially after they're all still struggling immensely with coping with Mari's death. It's honestly inconceivable. I can't imagine it's something they would ever get over, especially Aubrey. But what makes it worse is that Sunny can enter the room and see for himself Basil's demise. The hole gaping in his chest, something spilling out over his limbs, consuming his body, remaining behind him forever. The door disappears. Another thing for Sunny to repress. The friends crying, Aubrey apologizing over and over, Kel questioning why this keeps happening to them, why they are plagued with this. But Hero, fuck dude, he tells you to go home, that he can take care of everything. Even in these horrifying moments, his caring nature breaks through, which is all the more heartbreaking when he's unsure if they ever will be okay this time. Basil is, or was, depending on your choices, the kind boy who just wanted to help his friend. Although he made a horrifying mistake, he deserves forgiveness, something that he can only get through his relationship with Sunny. Mari. Need I say more? Her character is the ultimate sense of comfort within Headspace. I absolutely love the decision to make her the save point, and there is not a single picnic opportunity I didn't take. And the last picnic with her at the grave? Don't even get me started. Her kindness, her wisdom resonated with me. She is Sunny's safe space, which makes it clear as to why she is where you spawn from after you get a game over. She is Sunny's starting point, the person of whom his trauma and thus his reason to dream it all originates from. His consciousness will keep respawning by Mari's side until he can finally confront the truth, until he can finally move on. The game makes you care deeply about this sibling relationship. Literally every time Mari is on screen, she cuts through any negativity like a ray of sunshine. Of course, this makes her horrific death even more tragic. It looks over the player throughout the game, just like it does for Sunny, spilling through the cracks in the dream. When she offers you a smile or words of encouragement, it makes your heart warm, but also adds a doubt in the back of your mind. Is it okay to feel this happiness? And in Sunny's case, he must ask himself if he even deserves to feel happiness at all. He killed her. But above all, Mari wants Sunny to be able to forgive himself. It's impossible to know what she felt the moments before she died. Just like it's impossible to know if Mari in Headspace, the real one, whom we encounter before heading underwater, truly does forgive us for what we've done. In fact, my previous statement about Mari wanting Sunny to forgive himself, I can't say for certain if that's the case. Perhaps the version of Mari that tells us so is truly just a figment of Sunny's imagination, a personification of his desire for reconciliation. Or perhaps this is her soul, somewhere not on Earth, telling us how she really feels. It's impossible to know. However, Sunny should not have to rely on the supernatural in order to forgive himself. He should not have to wait for something to happen to finally have peace of mind. That logic is exactly how he got there in the first place. Instead, he must find it within himself, despite every other factor around him, to finally come to terms with what happened, to finally love himself again. Even so, I do believe that Mari would want him to forgive himself. I have faith in her memory, what Sunny remembers of her, her comfort and warmth, her loving nature, the way she would tell you that everything is going to be okay. The version of Mari we see in Headspace, telling Sunny that she loves him and that he should love himself. I believe that is the real Mari. After all, as the orchid says, my thoughts will follow you into your dreams. Now, before I really dive into the psychology of the game's titular character, I first want to speculate some more and try to answer a nagging question on my mind. Why did Sunny push Mari down the stairs? And what part does the stake play in all of this? Clearly he felt the intense pressure of the upcoming recital, and I'm sure Mari was a bit too critical of him during that time, causing him to snap. People often do things in a fit of rage, especially children. It is not a stretch to say that this is the end of it, but I think there is more to the story here, specifically the stake. Even as far back as the first trailer, it had a presence, and since then has remained a prominent figure within the marketing and actual game. But why? I had thought going in that it might play more of a role, but it's really only seen twice. It being with Sunny microwaves during the first night, and in a section much later in the game, buried in the snow. The latter example fascinates me. Clearly, I was right that this stake is important somehow, or else it wouldn't be there at such a pivotal section in the game. After some thinking, I feel like I figured out what it might represent and how it ties back to Mari's death. Simply put, my theory is that Sunny's parents, like Aubrey's father, were abusive. Now, I don't mean in the sense that they hit or starved him, but more in that their behavior is mentally abusive towards their children, which is always harder to identify and recognize. To be quite honest, many seemingly normal behaviors from parents are actually extremely detrimental to the mental development of their children. At the very least, when the game actually takes place, Sunny's parents have more or less abandoned him, at least emotionally. When we first play in the real world, as Sunny wakes up in the middle of the night, we see that his mother has left him a message. It is unclear how long she has been away, but it is enough where one could assume she would leave her 16-year-old son alone for at least over a week. Not only this, but Sunny has not gone to school in 3 to 4 years. He hasn't even really left the house, possibly at all. While parenting certainly is a delicate process, and I cannot imagine the suffering his parents had to endure after the apparent suicide of their daughter, they are without a doubt neglecting Sunny. I am sure of this because of the prominence of the stake. To me, it is the all-encompassing symbol of this neglect and abuse. Sunny is left with nothing but a cold steak to eat because his parents aren't there to take care of him. Through the directing of both the game and the trailers, not only is this act of eating steak prominent, but it is clearly something that makes Sunny feel extremely isolated, almost as if he was slid food under the door locked in his room. Hell, I even thought that was going to be the case when I watched the trailer. What's more, the steak is clearly spoiled. He probably knows this, but is left with no other choice, as there might not even be other food in the house, and he certainly isn't going out anytime soon. Of course, he throws it all up right after. So I believe it can be safely deduced that Sunny is the victim of neglect and abuse. I didn't even mention his father, and to my knowledge, it is left entirely unclear whether or not he is still in the picture. Even more, Aubrey notices that Sunny not only looks pale, but also extremely thin. Clearly, he is not eating enough. Honestly, if his parents were around for him, he might have even overcame his trauma right now. To me, it seems like he is a confused and scared kid, and has absolutely no reliable person that he can turn to. Of course, it is entirely possible that Sunny's parents could have been the model of perfect parenting, and only started to drop the ball after Mari died. It certainly doesn't take away from the neglect they are facing their son with now, but my bigger point here is that this abusive nature is part of the reason that Sunny pushed Mari down the stairs. And on that, I can't exactly prove my theory. However, my mindset is that abusive tendencies do not just start after a traumatic experience when you are an adult. Certainly, they will become amplified, as I'm sure was the case with Sunny's parents, but in most cases, I don't believe they will appear just because of that. To put it as a simple analogy, the seeds were always there, and it just took the death of Mari to water them and make them fully grow. So in my personal headcanon, Sunny's parents would often, at the very least, make passive-aggressive comments towards him and ignore many of the needs that he had. This gradually built up in the 12 years he was alive, and with the added pressure of the recital, finally blew up, causing Sunny to lash out in anger, pushing Mari. I've known several people in my life that have been on the receiving end of such parenting, of which we will call at the very least emotional abuse. And the one consistent factor across the board is a very low self-esteem, not thinking they're good enough. When the truth gets revealed and the player goes to the photos of Basil's perspective, it's fairly well known that the description of these pictures doesn't appear in-game, but instead in hidden game files. And in them, we can see that Sunny clearly thinks very low of himself, saying things like he's not good enough to play in the recital, and that he's just going to disappoint and let down all of his friends. He gets frustrated and wants to quit playing in the first place because his low self-esteem will not allow him to view his talents as sufficient enough. This frustration, of course, is what results in the argument and then Mari's accidental death. And it is to my firm belief that this low self-esteem stems from the emotional abuse Sunny's parents inflicted onto him. As I was wrapping up editing on this video, I came across this scene from the game and knew I had to include it. Firstly, we see that the family is extremely distorted, all except for Mari. One might expect that since Sunny is trying to repress the accident, that it would be Mari that would be blacked out, but instead she's the only one who isn't. This can mean a lot of things, but I personally believe that it shows how Sunny views his family and himself. His parents, perhaps unloving, becoming horrific beings in his subconscious. reflecting how they treat him and how he views that, and then himself, who he sees as the worst monster of all. Mari is the only pure one. To add to this, she then says that the photo is barely holding itself together, which I think the game adds in with intention. Sonny sees his family just as Mari sees the picture, fractured, grossly distorted, barely holding itself together. Like I said, this small snippet could mean a lot of things, but I believe it provides more evidence that, at the very least, Sonny does not view his family, aside from Mari, in a positive light. Whether that be from his parents being emotionally abusive towards him, well, that's up for you to interpret. This theory would suggest that not only is Omori a game about grief, suicide, and depression, but also has severe undertones of mental abuse towards children, as if the game wasn't fucked up enough. Like I said, even if Sonny's parents weren't necessarily abusive before Mari died, they undeniably are now. They have left their son alone for years to deal with the crushing and suffocating grief by himself, ultimately resulting in developing what is essentially a split personality just to deal with the trauma. This is all symbolized by that cold, inedible steak, and is why it is such a core factor to this game. Basically, parent your damn kids. There is also a common theory I've seen that Sonny's parents knew that he actually killed Mari, and then him and Basil covered it up. It would certainly explain the distance they keep from their son, especially the father, who can be seen hauntingly cutting down a tree, proclaiming that Omori is not his son. Honestly, I certainly think this theory is possible, but not only can coincide with my speculation, but I actually think it shows even worse signs of abuse. I mean, if his parents are aware that Sonny accidentally killed his sister and is obviously living with unspeakable trauma because of it, and yet they seemingly do nothing about it and more or less ignore the problem, at least from what we see in the game. And well, I don't think I have to tell you what is wrong with that. Sonny accidentally murdered his sister. Instead of confronting that horrific truth, his mind instead suppressed it, creating the avatar of Omori in order for him to live in a fantasy world. The journey, then, is to reverse these effects. The psychology of Sonny is fascinating to say the least. The advantage of having your game be played within the dreams of the protagonist is that it offers the player unique insights that are impossible without it. Anything within Headspace has the potential to say something interesting about Sonny, from the environments, to the bosses, to a lot of the side characters. Since that world is all in his brain, Sonny is Headspace. Thus, literally anything found within it can be used to help characterize him. 𝐁𝐫𝐞𝐚𝐤, a game that certainly provided a lot of inspiration for Omori, does the same thing with Matsuki, and it's just as fascinating here. For a good example of this in action, we can take a look at Sweetheart. While ultimately a character in her own right, she perhaps represents a side of Sonny that is suppressed within Headspace, the desire to love oneself. Time and time again, we see her attempting to find love, and her conclusion is that the only person that's worthy of her love is, well, herself. And of course, this is not necessarily shown in a positive light, which I believe is over-exaggerated for the sake of comedy, but when boiled down, it is still a journey of self-love. Sweetheart, however, is continually prevented from achieving said love, and it is both by the dream world and the main party itself that ultimately causes this. If I were to make a stretch, I could say that this serves as a mirror to Sonny's own journey, that Headspace and his wacky adventures within it are what is preventing him from confronting his truth and, ultimately, from learning to love himself. In this way, then, Sweetheart goes from a gag character who serves only as a dungeon boss to a caricature of the protagonist, bringing to light his desires that are kept suppressed and hidden from both himself and the player. This is only one example of how everything that occurs within the dream world can work towards the characterization of Sonny, and it is often how the game chooses to do so. Outside of Headspace, I've already covered much of Sonny's psychology in the second section of this video, and I'm sure you don't need an in-depth analysis of every step of his journey. This video is already probably an hour long, so now I want to focus on specific aspects that directly stood out to me, and try to bring new insights that you might not have thought during your first playthrough. First, we'll start all the way after Sonny has fought Basil. Going down memory lane to me was perhaps the most emotionally poignant section of Omori, which is obviously saying a lot. Basil points out that those photos, the ones you've been looking on and reminiscing about, aren't just pictures, they're memories that you and your friends share. And the game doubles down on that by having you relive those memories, filled with fun days at the beach, warm cookies, sleeping on your sister's lap, all of the good times you've had with your friends. They make the player feel such a sense of nostalgia, as if they really are Sunny and were there, as well as a desire to make new memories together. They're cozy yet bittersweet. But quite honestly, they more or less speak for themselves. But one aspect of this sequence cannot go unnoticed, and it is truly one of the most important decisions you will make in the game. Sunny has to choose to move on. Memory lane is absolutely vital to Sunny's journey of self-forgiveness. When suffering, especially in the way that Sunny is, it's incredibly easy to forget about those moments that made you feel loved and at home. Sunny needs to remember those feelings to know that things really can be okay again. But in another sense, he never really forgot those emotions, and instead they were warped into a perverted version of themselves deep within Sunny's subconscious. I am of course talking about Headspace. These memories serve as the foundation for that entire world. One of the first things you do in the game is look through Basil's photo album, which is just a false version of the pictures that were taken in real life. All Sunny has allowed himself to remember deep down are those happy memories, as he lives in the decaying shadow of them as Omori, over and over, endlessly repeating this sickening cycle. Negative emotions and memories of the accident are far removed from his psyche, leaving only the happy ones. But it's all a falsehood. Each time he repeats the cycle, those memories become dimmer as black space encroaches, to the point where the memories become cloudy, hard to recognize, instead replaced by fake counterparts that occurred in Headspace. To forgive himself, he first must relive these memories as they actually happened, feel the bittersweetness in his heart as he finally sees his friends' faces again and hears their voices for the first time in years. He must recognize what is within himself instead of putting a pretty purple shade over the picture. And then, once he has done this, he must let go. These moments that he desperately held on to, shutting out everything else, he needs to move on. Still remembering, but not living within them. This is where a choice comes in. As you leave each area, the game asks you if you're sure you want to leave yet. And for the first time, Sunny must say yes. He needs to choose to leave these happy memories behind and finally face his own trauma, of course in the form of Omori. Memories are a beautiful thing and should be cherished, but they can become an easy trap, letting us live within them without confronting our own problems. After all, they are still in the past. Now, Sunny must finally allow himself to make new memories together with his friends. Now, the fight with Omori. I haven't touched on it much, but what exactly is Omori? I referenced him earlier as a split personality, but that was more for simplicity's sake. I think he's something much more complex than that. Daryl Talks Games made an absolutely incredible video talking about Sunny's psychology, and while I don't have any experience or education in the field, I agree with the analysis. If you have not seen that video yet, now you got some work to do, but he makes the point that Omori is most likely suffering from dissociative amnesia, where the accident was such a traumatic experience for him that his brain purposely files it away, making his conscious self forget that it ever even happened. This is a fascinating perspective, and one that I certainly agree with. In this sense, Omori almost acts like a god of Headspace, becoming the personification of this amnesia, and creating a world filled with only Sunny's happiest memories. It's alluded to by Daddy Longlegs that Sunny has been living in Whitespace for a little while before Omori was even created. But I personally believe that this story only serves as Omori's formal introduction, that he existed within Sunny as a personification of his repression the moment after the accident, and became more prominent as the truth became harder to conceal. So then, Omori's the creator of Headspace, and also the one who goes on adventures within it. Always a black and white figure painted against a technicolor world, where emotions can quite literally be controlled and in some cases suppressed. But then, where does that leave Sunny? Is he basically just Omori, the latter acting almost as if a split personality? Well, yes and no. Of course, this is all just my perspective, but I think this is where the game makes an interesting connection with the player, and is also why I've been switching between referencing Sunny and then you, the viewer. Essentially, you, the player, are Sunny. Obviously, when you have a silent protagonist, they act as a self-insert for the audience, and Omori certainly has those elements, but in a way that sheds fascinating insights into Sunny's psychology. When in a dissociative state, one may almost feel simply like a pilot commanding their body instead of the usual cohesion, like a soldier piloting a mech, like a player controlling an avatar, and I think you see where I'm going with this. My belief is that Sunny is the player and is controlling Omori as if he's playing a video game. Like, he's literally playing Omori the game, in almost the same fashion that you are. Of course, there isn't a one-to-one comparison to make here, but you really are Sunny, at least within Headspace. I imagine it like Omori is a sentient being within that world, but lets his body be controlled by Sunny most of the time, like he's a sim or something. This makes those moments when the player loses control, namely when hurting and terminating Basil within Black Space, is even more horrifying, almost as if Sunny is losing control over a creation his own mind made. Omori is protecting Sunny as if he is the player, waiting for a juicy reveal within the game. And Omori certainly hides a ton of stuff from Sunny. It's strange to use this as a compliment, but the RPG that occurs in Headspace and the actual plot of the game are fairly disconnected. When I was going over the story in the second section of this video, I literally just skipped over the entirety of Otherworld because it wasn't really important to the plot. But like I said, in this case it is a compliment, as it enables the game to have an extremely fun RPG adventure while directly coinciding with the fascinating psychology of the main character. To find out why, let's first look at the story that occurs in Headspace. Our group of friends and us have to find Basil, but why did Basil disappear in the first place? I think it's clear that this was the work of Omori, not him as an avatar for Sunny, but rather him as the creator of the world. Throughout every loop, Basil is always the one to uncover the truth first. Of course, Omori can't let that happen, so he sends him away to Black Space. And then, yeah, your journey is technically to go find Basil, but to say there are a few distractions along the way would be a huge understatement. I mean, what does Space Boyfriend and Sweetheart's love really have to do with finding Basil? Almost the entirety of the journey serves to distract Sunny and thus the player from even thinking about Basil anymore. This, of course, results in Aubrey, 𝐁𝐫𝐞𝐚𝐤 even starting to forget who Basil is. Omori wants everyone, especially Sunny, to forget he ever existed. But of course, we are endlessly curious about the truth of this world, so we push on, analyzing small cracks within the headspace Omori created where the truth seeps through, all culminating in the end of the journey, Black Space. A place filled to the brim with Sunny's repressed emotions and memories, an absolute clusterfuck of sporadic thoughts mixed in with his trauma. And yet, even there, Omori reigns, killing Basil over and over as to prevent Sunny from discovering his own truth. The red hands, which always kept you within white space, helping hold down Basil. Red hands. Hands that push Mari down the stairs. Hands turned red, coated with blood, as Mari's lifeless body is carried outside. Everything accumulates once you, finally as Sunny, fight Omori in white space. That place of absolute security and emotionlessness that Sunny is sent to when things become too stressful. The final obstacle to overcome is yourself. Or more accurately, every single negative emotion, doubt, fear, and horrifying dread that you've kept buried away for all these years. In order to forgive yourself, you must first let these feelings boil over and confront them head on. Omori, of course, does not want this. It wants you to remain ignorant of Mari's death and your sins, of the friends you fear won't forgive you. But no, you've come so far. You won't let it end like this. So you fight, remembering the encouraging words your friends gave, the courage you've obtained by fighting all of your fears, the love you shared with everyone, Mari's hope for you to forgive yourself. You fight, and finally you overcome Omori, getting its health bar to 0. However, this gameplay feature, of which helped you a million times in your journey, preventing a game over time and time again, it returns, and everything clicks at once. Omori will not succumb so easily. It never has before. So you fight, getting its health to 0 again and again as it keeps getting back up, refusing to be overcome. It hurls your fears back at you, telling you that your friends will never forgive you, that you let everyone else take care of you, yet you give them nothing in return, that they all loved Omori and you killed her, that you don't deserve forgiveness, that you don't deserve to be happy, that you should just die. And then your health bar reaches 0 and game over hits you like a fucking train. Sunny will not succumb. You ready your violin and remember your dear sister Mari. You remember that love that you share. You remember the duet you never got to perform. And then you play the first note.
You remember the sister that you loved so much. You recall the piano that played only to her touch. Steadying your arms, violin in hand. The duet that never happened. The stage where you couldn't stand. Finally, you are ready. You play your final song. And after so long, you learn to forgive yourself for everything that went wrong. Tears streaming down your face, your world, which was stuck in place, can finally start to move again. And instead of the bad times, you choose to remember the song that you and Mari played.
Now it's time to make some new memories together and begin a new day. It gave me an option to disturb Earth, and now I am fighting. I literally killed this guy. This man is so fucking tall. His face is being covered. My man's is dead. What is there to do here? I realize I have so many Sprumbles in my party. It's a Congo eye. I have gained an army of sprout moles. Let me look in the fucking mirror, it's just silent, just fucking staring at me. Oh. I killed him with the cake. He's been replaced. Corgi spotted. Looks like he has a mustache. I don't want to go in there. I'm scared. Oh no. It's following me around. Get away from me. Come on, game. Why do you gotta ask me that? I hate it here. What the fuck is that? It took about 2 hours. And countless games of rock, paper, scissors, shoot. But we've done it. We're the pet rock champion. We've done it, boys. We've beaten Omori. If it wasn't apparent already, I love Omori. It is no less than my second favorite video game of all time. When I watched the trailer, I told my friends that if it wasn't at least in my top 5, I would be disappointed. That's how much of an impact it had on me. And after playing it, somehow it actually exceeded any expectations I had for it. I mean, there's an entire route I didn't even touch on and probably will never have the heart to actually play. I truly do believe the horror genre to be the best at telling human stories that can't be told any other way, and Omori is the best possible example of that. The most sincere compliment I can give to 𝐁𝐫𝐞𝐚𝐤 and team is that they had their own story to tell, and they did so without compromise. I only hope I was able to put my love for this game out into the world with this video. Now for some quick business stuff. As you can probably tell, this project was an immense undertaking. What I thought would be a 20-minute video turned out to be much, much more. I even surprised myself with how much I really had to say about this game once I was forced to introspect about it. And if you've made it this far, I truly appreciate it. I created this channel in the first place so I could gush about the things that I love. And although this project has been a daunting task to say the least, I would make it in every possible world line. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. I haven't uploaded regular content in a while as I've been working on this while also dealing with graduating college, moving, finding a job, etc. So I want the algorithm to see that people liked it. And please, I want to know everyone's thoughts down below. These kind of games just beg for a passionate community to love and talk about it. And I hope that I've given you at least a few new insights on the game. And hey, I certainly wouldn't mind if you subscribe to the channel. Would not mind that at all. Now that I've settled back into a rhythm, I plan on making much more content, and my goal is 1 video a week. One more thing before I go, I'll be starting a podcast soon with 2 of my best friends. I'll have a link to the channel in the description, which won't have any content for a month or so if you're interested. We'll be talking about a ton of different stuff, and my goal is just to get my ideas out onto the internet. To conclude Omori on a final note, I want to thank 𝐁𝐫𝐞𝐚 and the team for creating a once-in-a-lifetime experience, for giving me an escape from life's worries for a bit while I was in the dream world, and then reminding me that I have to get back up on my feet and live my life, that it's going to be okay even despite everything. Thank you for watching.